Om. 10 Commandments, Principles of Arya Samaj, Part 12. The third principle, the Scripture of Truth, Section 5. Vedas, the first book. From the old, the belief has obtained among Aryans that the revelation of God's knowledge, which could not be but in God's language, took place when man was first made in the form of the Vedas, namely Rigveda, Yajurveda, Samaveda, and Atharvaveda. If the issue were to be decided on the basis simply of remotest antiquity of all records available, the verdict would naturally be in favor of the Vedas. Of all human records, the Vedas are the oldest. The claim to constitute divine revelation has been put forward by more recent books too. But in justice to them, it must be recognized that they point back one and all to an earlier writ, which they invariably declare is their primal source. Among mankind, there has been a tradition to refer back to a past when man was in communion with God. Those same commandments, it is the professed mission of every new apostle to promulgate again, as age has tempered, so it is given out. With the truth of the former promulgation, now every promulgation is referred to as the book, and if it could be proved, one, that the Vedas are not only the oldest of all available human books, but are a record so remotely antique that between their antiquity and that of later records there can be no conception of temporal relativity, and two, that their text has been scrupulously preserved through incredibly long ages. The theory that they are divine revelation will acquire greater acceptability as according with the voice of universal tradition and fulfilling the demands of the philosophical necessity pointed out above, that man should, in the beginning of his mental life, be endowed with divinely revealed knowledge through divinely revealed speech. The age of the Vedas. Since the day of Dayananda, scholars in the East as well as in the West have been busy making continuous research into the contents and history of the Vedas. The conclusions they have arrived at as regards the age of the Vedas may be briefly set forth as follows. Number 1. Professor Max Muller places the compilation of the whole Vedic literature before 400 before Christ, this last being the date of the rise of Buddhism. The Vedic literature is divided by him into 4 strata, namely the Chandas, the Mantras, the Brahmans, and the Sutras. The more common and to us the only acceptable division is that which combines Chandas and Mantras into one stratum. This is the natural, the traditional division. Assuming that the evolution of human intellect in the primitive epochs should, for what reasons it is not known, have been much swifter than in later ages. Professor Max Muller assigns a period of 200 years for the development of each stratum, this carrying the earliest composition of Vedic Chandas as early as 1200 years BC. Later considered this estimate too low and adds to it in his Chips from a German Workshop 300 years more, thus pushing the date to 1500 BC. This computation is, on the face of it, vague and arbitrary, and yet Professor Max Muller is of opinion that the Veda will take and maintain forever its position as the most ancient of books in the library of mankind. Number 2. According to Professor MacDonald, the history of ancient Indian literature naturally falls into two periods. The first is the Vedic, which beginning perhaps has yearly 1500 before Christ, extends in its latest phase to about 200 BC. A history of Sanskrit literature. Number 3. A. Weber places this period in the 16th century before Christ. Number 4. The method followed by Dr. Hogg for the estimation of the age of the Vedas is the same as that of Max Muller, excepting only that he assigns a period of 500 years to the formation of each literary stratum. He thus places the commencement of the Vedic literature of 2400 before Christ. Number 5. B. G. Tilak finds that the astronomical data supplied by the Vedas themselves, namely geographical and astronomical hints in the hymns, pointing to the beginning of the solar year, which according to him was then reckoned from the vernal equinox in Orion and prior to that in Aditi, indicate that the time to which this phenomenon belongs could not have been later than 6000 to 4000 BC. The description of continuous dawns and Arctic phenomenon is to him additional evidence that these records refer to interglacial or preglacial periods when the Arctic regions were habitable. These traditions may have been incorporated into the hymns according to him in the post-glacial epoch, which geology places at the lowest estimate at 8000 BC. Number 6. N. B. Paugi bases his view as regards the Number 6. N. B. Paugi bases his view as regards the antiquity of the Vedas on the same geological data as Tilak. He vacillates among many figures ranging from 16,000, the beginning of the latest glacial epoch, to 240,000 years back. Hence, when the tertiary epoch and according to Dr. Cook, the glacial age closed. The beginning of the post-Vindhyan epoch, which coincides with the Cambrian in Europe, of which relics are found in the lowest geological stratum in India, and features of which Paugi thinks are spoken of in the hymns, is another landmark in geological history which impresses Paugi as the possible data of the material contained in the Vedas, that is from 7 million to 6 billion years back. Hence, Vedas co-evolve with man. Number 7. A. C. Das declines to place the abode of the primitive Aryans in the Arctic regions on the evidence adduced by Tilak. He reconciles the phenomena recorded in the Vedas with the geographical conditions of a tract of land extending in a past geological epoch in the north to the northern boundary of eastern Turkestan and in the south as far as Rajputana, beyond which there was on both sides the sea. To him, some of the descriptions in the Vedas appear to refer to such configuration of land as, according to geological hypothesis, could have existed in the Miocene or the Pliocene epoch, whose age is to be computed by some hundreds of thousands, if not millions of years. Rigvedic India, page 21. This, it is to be noted, is also the time as regards which A.C. Das finds there is available the earliest geological and archaeological evidence of the existence of man. It may therefore be summarized that man also existed in the Miocene or at any rate in the Pliocene epoch. This surmise has received a strong confirmation by the actual discovery of relics in an upper Miocene deposit in further India. Thus, Vedic research advances in the antiquity of the Vedas ever farther and farther into the past. Latest theories tend to affirm that the Vedas are not only the oldest record of humanity but are a record coeval with the earliest appearance of man on the earth. The belief of Indian theologians as regards the antiquity of the Vedas is thus finding greater and greater support at the hands of scientific research. Continued.